Walter I've reached the Corgi Iskri. Welcome to another video from Gundog and Fly. And to say that I got a great response to my last two videos would be an understatement. It's been absolutely fantastic. Thanks to everybody who contributed. The two videos I'm talking about, if you haven't watched them, are two sessions where I fished around two different bridges for approximately an hour in each case. And I caught some fish, and the method that I was using is my upstream nymphing method, which I have been using for donkey's years. And I have, I think, perfected it to a degree where I can catch fish on it. Most times I use that method, assuming that fish are active. If fish are active, the upstream nymphing method is absolutely fantastic and a really enjoyable way to fish. So the response to the videos included quite a few questions about upstream nymphing, and although I've done videos on it before, in this video I plan to do a really comprehensive set of lessons on upstream nymphing, if you like. Today what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you about how I set up my line and my leader, etc. for upstream nymphing and the tackle that I use. And then at a later point I will go onto the river and show you how I fish the upstream nymph and how I find it the most effective ways to use it. Now, to some people it appears to be somewhat of a mystery, and I don't use indicators. I'll get into that as we go along. People think that it's some form of magical formula or something that I use, and it's not. It's quite simple really once you understand the principle. I started upstream nymphing approximately, must be all of 35 years ago. And I think for quite a number of years I was the only person nymph fishing roundabout where I fish here in mostly County Tipperary, on the river shore and its tributaries. And I was fishing nymphs for years and years before anybody else even knew or had a clue what nymphs were. Now, I used to fish competitions back then. I no longer fish competitions, something I'll get into again later on. I used to fish competitions, and I was very successful in the competitions as a consequence of having that in my armory, the upstream nymphing, and nobody else had a clue what I was doing. Anyway, to get back to the practicalities of it, I'm going to show you now how I set up my line and my reel and my leader, etc., and then we'll get to the other tackle as I go along. Right, so reason I'm starting with the reel and the line, for me it's the most important component that you have this correctly set up so that you can get the maximum out of it. And again, it's not rocket science, it's a very, very, very simple. Upstream nymphing is a simple process, and the setting up of it is simplicity itself. I use a couple of different methods of setting it up, but I'm going to show you the one that I most commonly use, okay? So what I have here is my reel with a floating 3-weight line, okay? A floating 3-weight line, and to that I have attached a tapered leader. I attached it using a nail knot. Now there's a tire, where is it? Just around here someplace. There's a particular tool that I just can't lay my hands on momentarily. Where is it? Anyway, everybody ought to be familiar with a nail knot. There's a tool that you use just to tie the knot to attach it to the fly line. Now, I never ever use braided loops, or I never use the loops that come now with fly lines. When I buy a fly line, if there's a loop on the end, right, for upstream nymphing, I cut the loop off and I just attach my leader with a nail knot to the fly line. Braided loops soak water and they will sink the tip of your fly line, and that is anathema to this method. You need to have this section of the line floating high at all times. Now, my tapered leader is generally 9 feet long, and then to that 9-foot leader I attach 3 or 4 feet of tippet. Now the sizes, okay? The size leader that you use will be determined by the river conditions. If you're fishing in relatively high water, say spring, normal spring weather, spring water, you'd be using a 9-foot tapered leader down to say 5x, and then you would attach a 3 or 4 feet of 6x tippet to that leader. Now, just incidentally, this year, as I've mentioned in the other videos, the river is the lowest I have ever seen it at this time of the year. I'm here in early April, and we have conditions that would be more pertaining to the month of June. Very, very low water. So in that case, as in all types of fishing, all types of fly fishing, you reduce the size of everything. As the water thins out and gets lower, it gets more clearer, it's easier for the fish to see things, they're much more spooky, so you have to fish a lot lighter. So what I then use in that case is I use a tapered leader down to 5x or 6x, and then I use an appropriate tippet, either 6 or 7x. Now 7x is extremely light. I think it's only 2.5 pounds breaking strain, but sometimes it's necessary to fish that fine, and particularly if you're using very, very small nymphs, which I use quite a lot of the time. In the 2 videos you saw, if you haven't seen them, just look back through the videos there and you'll see me fishing at both bridges. In that case I was using very, very small nymphs. I think the biggest I used was 18, and then I went down to size 22 when I went into, when I got to places where it was necessary, and I'll explain that as I go along. The particular places require particular I'm trying to put it the best way I can, is that flat water and very, very gin clear water require much, much lighter equipment than you would say in broken choppy water or in high water. That's the best way I can explain it. So I'm going to just refresh there, okay? I'm using 3 weight. You can use 4 weight, 5 weight, anything beyond that is a bit too heavy. Now you get away, 5 weight is even a little bit heavy for the really, really small nymphs, like say size 20, 22. 5 weight is a bit overpowered. So a good compromise would be a 4 weight. A 4 weight you'd handle most eventualities, and you can fish almost any size of nymph on a 4 weight. I like 3 weight myself because there are other advantages, which again I will get to later on, okay? So anyway, just to refresh, 3 weight floating line, tapered leader of the appropriate size, and then 3, 4, sometimes 5 feet of tippet. And that's it in a nutshell. It's as simple as that. It's not complicated in any sense. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk to you about the particular rod that I use. Not that any 3 weight rod will do. Any 4 weight rod will do, or any 5 weight rod will do. It's just that I have a particular preference for 3 weight. I like 3 weight across the board. There are many advantages to it. This is just a 9-foot 3 weight. It's Syndicate, made by Syndicate. It's a lovely little rod for upstream nymphing and for dry fly. The advantage of upstream nymphing, of course, one of the advantages of this system, if you like, is that, let's assume for a minute that you're fishing upstream nymphing and you suddenly see a couple of trout rise or a trout rise. Now sometimes they will take the upstream nymph, but sometimes they won't. So oftentimes what I will do is I'll just snip the nymph off and put on a dry fly. An immediate switch. It only takes seconds to fish for the fish that's rising. So you have the advantage of fishing the upstream nymph and dry fly at the same time. Like I said, this is a 9-foot 3 weight. Just a general good all-rounder rod. Nothing particularly magical about it or anything, it's just a rod like any other. So like I said, any 9-foot 3 weight is my preference. I have a couple of more 9-foot 3 weights, but I just grabbed this one because it's just convenient for me to grab this. But any 9-foot 3 weight or 4 weight as a compromise. 5 weight, okay, but you're bordering on a little too heavy, particularly for the smaller nymphs. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you the flies that I use. Okay, the flies I use, generally speaking, are very simple creations that I've been using for many years and I've had a lot of success with them. And like I said, they're very simple creations. When it comes to nymphs, there's kind of a general rule that I go by. Bright day, bright fly. So on a sunny day like today, I'll be fishing today, I'll be using sort of bright flies, and when it gets darker I just use darker flies. Sizes, they sort of range. These are 16s up here, more 16s, a couple of 18s and 16s here, and then I have my 20s. There's a 20 there, 20, and then two 22s there. I'm kind of running low, I need to stock up on them. But the lower the water, the clearer the water, and the brighter the day, you just reduce the size of everything. That includes the flies. So like I said, these flies are very simple. The only thing, like, people get kind of caught up in fly patterns and think they have to have an exact representation of this, that or the other. You don't. Basically what I do is I make simple flies, and maybe I might vary the colour of the bead. Like I have copper beads here and silver beads. Silver beads are kind of very reliable all the time. Gold beads are also good. Copper, they all work on their day, but for the most part I just use silver beaded flies. And in this little box here I have 6 sections where I have dry flies. So these little boxes, they're available. This is a Richard Wheatley box. Now they're quite expensive to buy, but they're made by other manufacturers as well, but they're real handy just to carry what I need. Just a few nymphs here and a few dry flies in that little six section box. Just a little tip for you: if you're storing dry flies in a box, always keep them loose in boxes. Don't stick them in the foam, because that will actually be to their detriment. It'll do them harm. So anyway, that's the little box of flies, and they're more or less typical of what I'd be using on any given fishing day. So there you are, folks. There's a bit of a close-up of the flies. Like I said, I have my nymphs on this side here and my dry flies here. So I can swap between the two methods, assuming that trout are either taking nymphs or surface flies, or maybe both. Now, I want to talk a little bit about indicators and why I don't use them. Now, some people become very reliant on indicators. There are many different types of indicators, but generally there's some sort of high visibility material, sometimes feathers, sometimes a bit of foam or similar. Basically it's a tiny float, and even though it might be tiny, the reason I don't use them, 2 reasons. The first reason is when you have low water, particularly like I've spoken about earlier, for this time of the year the river is very low. If I was to use an indicator, a high vis, say for instance piece of foam or something, if I cast that over the river I will scare every fish in the area, because the fish that I'm fishing for are extremely spooky fish, and they will scatter at the slightest sign of anything unnatural. I've seen it many times where even just the flash of the leader or the fly line will scare them. So obviously you're magnifying that many times by using an indicator. As well as that, it can interfere with your casting to a degree, particularly with any bit of wind or anything. The wind catches them. So, but my main concern would be the fact that they scare fish in a big way. I've seen it many times, I've demonstrated it many times, and you can see fish and they're quite happily feeding, and one cast with that indicator over them and they're all gone. So that's one reason I don't use them. The second reason I don't use them is the skills required for upstream nymphing. If you want to get good at it and you want to be proficient at it, you will not, if you use an indicator, that gets in the way of you maximizing your potential as an upstream nympher, we'll call it. Although we are using an indicator in a sense, we're not using an indicator as I've described, a big bunch of high-vis feathers or whatever the case may be. The indicators that I use are entirely different and require learning, and that is where the real skill is involved. It was I can't remember who it was that made a really funny, one of the best comments that were ever made on the channel. I think Irish people will get a great kick out of it, because we're supposed to be a Catholic country, whatever. Anyway, he said that I can't figure out how you see the indications without the aid of an indicator. He said it looks like it's up there with the third secret of Fatima. I thought it was hilarious. I don't believe any of that stuff. It was a really funny comment. So, but it's not difficult. The way that I detect takes, I'll explain when I get to the river. That's where the real skill is involved. Now there are other skills involved as well, like casting, controlling the line, trying to eliminate drag, and a few other things that I'll get to in time. But the real skill is in detecting the takes without the use of an indicator. That's what will make you a really good upstream nymph angler, if you can develop that skill. Now it takes time. So I've been doing it for a long time, so I probably make it look easy because it's second nature to me, because I've been doing it so long. But when I try to teach people this, they seem a little bit overwhelmed by it. But as I explain, as I will explain down the road, it just requires that you practice enough that you tune in. When you get tuned into it and when you're at one with the system, well then you will be surprised at how effective this method is and how many fish you can actually catch when most other people can't. Okay folks, I'm just going to put the rod together here now. Get the line through the rings, and then I will show you probably one of the most important things about setting up. So I have on, as I described earlier, 9-foot 3-weight floating line, tapered leader and tippet added. Okay, now I'm going to tie on a little fly. So I'm going to fish the broken water first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fish a size 18. Now I'll explain as we go along the reason why I've chosen 18. And then I'll possibly swap for a smaller size as we move into the flatter water. Now, watch this if nothing else. The front of the fly line and the tapered leader, okay? I'm going to grease it. Now there are different kinds of grease. Basically you're looking for line floatant. Now this is called, it's made by Loon, it's called paillette paste. The mucilin, it's just grease essentially. Doesn't matter what make it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grease the front of the fly line here. I want that to float high on top of the water, not in the surface film or under it. Because if it goes under the water, you've got all kinds of problems and issues. And now I'm going to grease also the tapered leader until I reach the knot where my tippet is. So I've greased all the way to within about 4 feet of the fly. That's it, simple. Okay, lovely stretch of broken water here, which should hold a couple of fish. So The advantages of fishing broken water for someone who's learning this is that broken water is much more forgiving than we'll call it flat water, because it'll disguise any mistakes that you make, or it'll disguise your line. It's a very bright day today, so there'll be line flash and the sunlight can flash off the leader, and particularly on a flat that can easily be seen by the fish. But in a place like this with broken water, well, they're at the disadvantage. Okay, so I'm going to start off, and how I decide to cast, the way I work it is like a fan. I make a cast there, 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 say 4 for example. So I'm going to start off nice and slow and just cast. And now what I'm doing is I'm trying to see the greased part of the leader. That's your indicator. And I'm going to call this section Trust Your Instincts. So any little move, anything that's not consistent with the flow of the current, anything that interrupts its flow, you strike immediately. And you trust your instincts. You never second guess. That's one of the biggest issues people learning this, is an indication happens and they don't respond to it because they simply don't have enough experience to know that you need to strike at everything. Now sometimes it won't be a fish. Sometimes it'll just be a stone or a weed or something else like that, or maybe an imaginary take. But you have to respond to everything. So I'm just allowing it to come back to me at the pace of the current, obviously, and all I do is I stay in touch. And it's very important that you stay in touch with the fly, that there's the minimum of slack line between you and the fly, because when there's an indication you need to get on it immediately, and slack line will prevent you getting an immediate contact. So stay in touch. And I'm doing that by just bringing it through the fingers of my right hand. Now anywhere near a bridge, of course, is likely to be fished a lot more than other places because, of course, of the convenience. And the fish here will likely, well, I've caught some here before, but I'm quite sure others will have caught fish here before also. So they'll be aware of beaded flies in particular. There. That indication was very, very subtle. Hardly, not perceptible to probably a beginner. Now, note I've wet my hand for those who get hung up on that sort of thing. So there we go, that's the first fish. Lovely. So now, I understand that I'm using a GoPro here and it doesn't zoom in to where you might see the indications, the obvious indications, but that indication wasn't obvious at all. It was a very, very subtle indication, and I just respond automatically to them because I'm so long fishing like this. Beginners will hesitate, they always do. So, but you will eventually develop the instinct and respond as required immediately. Depending, of course, on the volume of fish in your river, sometimes you can catch a lot of fish in just a very small area, assuming that they're in the taking mood. Also important that you don't drag the fly. For those of you who are dry fly fishers will know what I'm talking about. If the fly drags, well then it won't appear as a natural insect, and can often scare fish away more than anything. So try to avoid drag if you can. Now I responded there even though it wasn't a fish and most likely a stone. I'm up in very shallow water here now. But like I said, trust your instinct and respond to everything. And if like every fly line, floating fly line, they all eventually end up as sink tips. It appears to me no matter how much you pay for a floating line, they will all inevitably sink. So sometimes the greasing, you might have to do it several times throughout the day just to keep the tip of the fly line floating on the water. The reason you need it to float very high is that if it sinks into the surface film, your reaction times will be slowed down because you'll have to pull the line through the water, assuming that you've detected the take. And if your fly line's under the water, that's increased incrementally. So you need to have your fly line floating as high as possible. So now just one fish from that area. I would have expected more, but conditions aren't ideal either. It's bright sunshine and it's cold. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move to another area and try again. Okay, I've just moved over here. First fished over there, so I've just moved over here and I'm going to have a few casts here. Under those bushes looks promising. Oh, that wasn't a fish. Thought it might have been. Yeah, I think it's a salmon power. Yeah, and he got off. Anyway. Yeah. Again, a subtle take. Handy when they fall off like that, isn't it? Back into the same place. The takes I've had so far have been subtle. Sometimes they're much more pronounced and much easier to detect. I speculate on the reasons for that. Some days I think fish maybe are a little bit more aggressive and they grab it and sort of scatter off at it, and that gives you a very profound indication that you couldn't miss. But it's to develop the instinct for those subtle takes is what really matters, because that's the real magic of this upstream nymphing technique. Now, of course, if I wear glasses because my eyesight isn't what it could be. Now I can see perfectly well with the glasses. Without them, I'd be in big trouble. So I suppose if your eyesight has depreciated to the point where even glasses won't help, well then you might have to use an indicator and scare some fish off. But if your eyesight is reasonably good, you should have no bother learning this and learning how to detect those subtle takes. Over there looks good. That's another skill too, reading the river, knowing where fish are likely to be, but that's for another video. Those of you who have the experience will know where a fish is most likely to be at, and obviously those areas are worth searching. Just like here, for instance. Oh, lost him. I had him on for a second again. I was a fraction late. Yeah, I got it that time. Maybe it's a different fish. Yes. Again, knowing where they're likely to be is very helpful. Hey fella. By the way, these are barbless hooks. So there may be, I've missed one in there and caught one, so there may be another in there. It's just a really likely looking spot. Yep. It's a good fish. Just been joined over there by Dave, who I'm going to give a run through on upstream nymphing. Whoa! Come here, fella. Oh, lovely fish they are. And even though they're not large fish, they're great fun. So just for your information, that nymph that I have on here, again, very simple. All it is a silver bead and a little bit of green wire behind it. That's all it is. So don't get too hung up on what patterns to use. Once it looks edible, they'll likely have it if they're in the mood. Right, I've come up here now onto the flat, and I'm going to change this size 18 for a size 22. Now the reason for that, even though 18 is quite small and will do fine in broken choppy water, on really fine water like this where it's very, very flat, you need to go way down in size, because even an 18 will be too splashy. So I'm tying on here now a size 22, and that will have very little impact as it hits the water. And Dave is coming up here to join me, and I'm going to explain to him. What? Did I? So I'm going to give Dave a run through on upstream nymphing, but I'm going to do a little bit here on the flat myself first of all, and with a size 22. Now fishing a flat is a completely different prospect than fishing in the broken water. I'll speak about it as I go along. So now, size 22 beadhead nymph again, nothing too special. The important thing with flats like this, and given that we have bright sunshine as well, if you cast directly over where you think the fish is, you're likely to get a flash from the sun on either your fly line or your leader, and that will scare the fish off, particularly in flats like this. So let's assume that you suspect there's a fish over there. Well, then what I would do is I would false cast here and then drop my delivery out, so they only get to see the fly line once. It minimizes the chance of them detecting you. So here we go. So I'm casting out to my left here, and then I'm going to push my delivery up there. And there you go. Oh, he got off. I was a fraction late again. I think I'm slowing down in my old age. Did you see that, Dave?
I did.
I'm watching the leader, because that's essentially my indicator. And even that 22 splashes a bit too much if you're not careful with your casting. So try and drop it in as subtly as possible. Now if you have a bit of wind upstream, which we don't have today, it's ideal because it again, it disguises things, it ripples the surface of the water. Yeah, there we go. Again, a very subtle take. Did you see that take, Dave?
Yeah, very subtle.
Did you see it? Well, that's enough. If you saw it, that's all that's required. That you just see the take.
Yeah,
very subtle, exactly, right? So but on a flat like this, it's all about the delivery and how subtle you can make that, because any bit of splashing or anything like that will scare them off. Oh, terrible cast. See him?
Yeah.
I dropped it just behind him. Now he just barely broke the surface.
That was the second time.
Was it?
Yeah.
I should reach him this time then. Fish just broke the surface there. That should cover him if I haven't scared him off. Oh, he was a good fish. He got away though, Dave. Ah?
That was very subtle. I didn't see
Yeah,
that.
he was a nice fish now. So I think I'm after slowing down on my reactions. I'm not catching them as regularly as I might. Oh, again, huh? Whether they're not taken right or whether it's my slow reaction time, I don't know. I'm after missing a few there anyway. my reaction time was fine just below the bridge. Yeah, oh, see that again? I wonder if they're coming short or something. Must check the hook on that fly maybe, that might be a problem. Now I've hooked what, 3 or 4 there in succession without actually bringing them, landing them, so just check. Yeah, everything appears okay. I don't know, maybe they're just not committing or something, because generally I'd have those caught. Anyway, we'll continue on. Now, if you were to use an indicator here, you would definitely scare everything in the area. Even fishing like this would scare some of them, despite my best efforts. But an indicator would definitely scare the life out of them. I'm going to have a look at the way Dave is set up here. Yeah, his leader is okay. It's just a tapered leader, which is just fine, about 10 feet long, but this nymph is way too big for this kind of water, so I'm going to change that for a smaller size. Here you go, Dave. We'll put on something quite a bit smaller. So I think we'll just kind of do a compromise, a kind of an 18. Because I think that'll do the trick. Okay. Now I'm going to have to add a bit of leader to that, Dave. That leader is too heavy for those light flies. So you just hold that nymph there a second. And I'll add a little bit of fine leader onto that. I suspect that, why is it, 6x or something like that?
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah, well, we need to go down a bit because we need to go a bit more subtle. See if I can find something here that'll do the job. That should do it. So this is a little bit of 7x I'm just going to add on to Dave's leader here, because what he's using is way too heavy. Not only would they see it, but when you're fishing a very small fly, if you use a heavy leader, the fly won't behave naturally. It's stunted in its movements by the heavier leader. So we're going to add on just 3 feet of 7x here now, and that should make the difference. Now, Dave, have you greased for the line?
Yep.
Did you grease the line already?
Yep.
Okay. Right. Let's just tie on this guy. I think he's an 8. I think he might be a size 20 actually. But he's small enough to do the job, and it's been working for me up to now anyway. Right, Dave. Everything's ready to go. So just come up a few more yards and right, so we're going to start here. Come up here beside me. Find that big rock. Come around that big rock. Have you go around the other side of it now and start casting up in front of you there now, okay? And watch the leader like a hawk.
Yeah.
For any movements, right? Good. Watch the leader, or the front of the fly line will indicate. There you go. You were a fraction late, Dave. That'll do. Go on. Good. Watch it like a hawk now, and be ready to strike. There you go. You see it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fraction too late.
You were too late. That was a subtle take, But you did see it, but you see again, like I explained earlier to the viewers, people don't trust their instincts, and you need to trust your instincts. You need to strike every time anything happens. Don't second guess. Right, out a little bit further to the right. That's it. Good, good. Stay in touch with it now. Stay in touch. Keep going. You're doing well with your line control and your casting. That's fine. There you go. Do you see that, Dave?
Yeah.
You second guessed it again.
myself.
Now, it may not have been a fish, could have been a weed, could have been a rock, could have been anything, but you need to hit everything. You see those loops? You need to try and eliminate them. Try and get your line as straight as possible. So when you're making your delivery, follow it down. That's better. Good. Move out a bit to the right. Watch it now. You're coming into what I would consider ideal water. See that loop again? Right, you'll miss even if he does take. You need to have your line as straight as possible. That's better. Now you're detecting takes that are not happening at all. Requires a bit of concentration. Now bring your rod around to the right. That's it. Bring the rod around. That's it. Now follow it around. That's it. And then it's behaving naturally. Good. Pick it up now and go again. You're tangled up. I will sort out this mess and get back to you in a sec. Sorted that tangle now. Off you go again. And you've done exactly the same thing again, Dale. Yeah. Where are we now? You're not using the rod, you're using your arm, you see. So you need to use the rod, not your arm. Bring the line around to your own side. Now, push the rod. Don't be using your arm. Go on now. That's much better. Watch it now. Mend your line over there now. Just mend it over. That's it. Bring it over. That's it. Good. Now mend your line out to your right. I'll pick it up. Right in front of you. Now lay it down nice and straight. Very good. Watch it now. And again. Good, watch it, watch the end of the fly line and the leader. Good. Move out to your right a fraction. Fish up the horizon in there, see him? You landed it on top of his head. You need to land it a little bit in front of him. Go. A little bit in front. Now you're scare him. If you drop it right on him, you'll scare him. So you need to drop it 2-3 feet above him. So lengthen the line. If you haven't him scared off already, he might take. He might take now. So be ready. You probably scared him when you dropped it on his head. Better. Good. Move out a bit to the right. Cast out a bit to the right there. Now, keep in front of it. Keep in front of it. That's it. There. Good. Follow it now. Just follow it. Don't pull on it. Follow it. Lift your line this way. Lift your rod up in the air. Right, off you go again. Good. Watch it now. Faster in with the left hand. There you go. You were too late again. And that was a very obvious take, Dave. You need to be lightning fast.
Yeah.
No, it's easy for me to talk, but I missed 4 or 5 below. Watch it there. That's very good, lovely drift. You're doing well, Dave, on your line control now, in fairness. Out that angle, see there towards the tree. Good, now mend your line off down. You'll have to do better than that, mend it off down. That's it. So now go strike. Too late again. The second that hits the water, mend your line downstream. Mend your line downstream, good. Now you're in line, you see, everything's in line. Come on now, you'll catch a fish eventually, Dave. I have confidence in you. Stay in touch, good. You're doing very well. Over there, look, see that angle? Cast at that angle. Mend your line downstream, good, excellent. Right, again. There. Good.